Hi everyone, before we go into the podcast, I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I'm super grateful for your continued loyalty and support. If you could do me a quick favour, if you could give me a review on Apple Podcasts, it really helps the algorithm and it will help this podcast go up the lists. If there are any subjects or topics that you want me to cover, then please do reach out to me on DM on LinkedIn and I will do my best to find the best guest for that subject or topic. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. Get ready to learn from other successes and failures. Today we have Laurie Lewis, who is a certified coach in intermittent fasting. Hello, Laurie. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. Nice to meet you and be with you.
It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for joining me. So we're going to go through the 4 E's, which is what I describe it as, which starts with education. So you did a history and German studies degree. Is that right?
I did. It's a classic liberal arts education that when you're done with it, you learned how to write and read and speak and think and contemplate and figure out how to get a job after that.
I did exactly the same. I did a politics, so you got political science degree.
Oh yeah.
Had no
Here you are, Prime Minister.
A politician or anything. So as you say, it gives you background into learning. But why did you choose German studies? Did you? Well,
that was kind of by accident. I had to pick a language in we say high school, and I was born in Germany and by American parents. And so when it came to choose a language when I was, 13 or 14, I chose German. And I had a terrible experience with the teacher. But then I got into my little liberal arts college and continued with a language requirement. And I thought, well, I started this German, I might as well keep going. And the idea of switching to Spanish or French or Russian or what have you didn't appeal. Well, I ended up having the best teacher ever. And quite by accident, I just kept taking classes and studying in Germany and reading. It was a German study. So it was, again, this whole hybrid of learning. It was political science and literature. So I'm reading Thomas Mann in German, and I loved it so much that suddenly it was my major. That's kind of the theme of my life is love it, dig in, and then I'm full immersion.
And did you spend much time in Germany?
I did. Well, I spent the first year of my life, which of course I don't remember. And then when I was in college, I went many times, but even recently in business, gosh, it shows my age. Recently, 10 years ago feels recently. I had a series of projects in Germany and Austria with Adidas, as they say in Germany, Adidas, the rest of us say. And I found myself there on some projects about 8 times in that year. And I realized that somewhere deep in my brain, the being fluent in German was not lost. It's in there somewhere because it just came out.
I was going to say, when you went back, did you pick up the language straight away? Like, 'cause if you were fluent, then
very rusty. And here's what was so cool about it was that I decided in my hotel rooms to turn the TV on, which I wouldn't normally do. I don't like the background noise. But what was so exhilarating was I would hear a phrase in an ad or in a TV show, and I'd be like, I remember, and it's putting the words together that's so exciting and the particular structure. And I was like, I remember what that means. And then I'd go to work the next day and use it. So yeah, I came back not well.
Because friends of mine, I'm not very good at languages, but friends of mine who they say 2 ways of really being able to pick up a language is one, listening to TV and radio is really, really good, and also the immersion. Just go out there and immerse yourself in the subject, in the area, and you can learn very quickly.
Yeah, I love it. And I have a strange ability to mimic the accent quite well. So people
Oh,
actually
yes.
think that I'm a better language speaker than I am because I can echo how it sounds. I'm like,
Because it's
no,
quite
I don't know
hard.
anything. I can just say one thing.
Right, it's hard though. The German is very. It's a very sharp language, isn't it? It's very direct.
I love it. I love it for some reason. Yeah, if there's anybody who has the patience to speak German with me, I think at this later stage in life, maybe I should resuscitate that.
Absolutely.
That would be fun.
Okay, so let's go on to your experience. So a lot of your early experience when I was doing some research was in retail. So you worked for Ralph Lauren, Tiffany, Cartier as store managers. Is that right? You sort of worked your way through the store. So
I
why
did.
did you go into retail?
It's just what I'm good at and what I love. And the particles of what I love are I love being in a beautiful environment. I love welcoming people in. They came in for a reason. So let's get to know them and discover. I love training teams of salespeople and service people. I love having the whole store work, the mechanics of it. I think being a retail store manager, you have to wear a lot of hats, like my liberal arts education, and enjoy that. And I think a love of people is important, a love of beauty, a love of a good story. I've worked for story rich companies with high quality products that it's really fun telling the story, even about where the fabric came from, or it just, I love going in deep and I love making people happy. And so the retail environment is something that I grew up in the mountains of Colorado. So I love snow. I love mountains. I love blue sunshine in winter. And in this little mountain town, there were lots of little shops. And so I got as a young girl, I started working in the different shops. And then fast forward to my liberal arts degree in history and German studies. And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I went to work for Laura Ashley back in the day when she was even alive. That was like 100 years ago. And oh my goodness, I went in the whole 9 yards, the bows and the flounces and the flowers and all of it. And I managed several Laura Ashley stores back in the day. So, yeah.
So you spent time in retail and then you took a shift into marketing. And then you went a little bit back and forth between marketing and retail. So what made you shift to marketing as a sort of industry?
Well, I love the idea of strategic marketing and branding. And again, it comes naturally for me. And there's a ability that I have to tell a story and to be consistent and be on brand. And people are like, what is that on brand? And I'm like, so I enjoy that. And, truth be told, retailing is not the most lucrative career endeavor. Everybody around me, nobody around me had to work weekends, work nights, work holidays, and get paid pennies. So there were times in my career where I had some opportunities to shift and pivot and go into retail consulting and retail research. And then I was hired by JP Morgan Chase to be the head of branch branding, which meant all the 5,600 Chase banks in the U.S. I ensured that they had a consistent feel and look and the way the stores were designed and the marketing messaging and the employee uniforms, and that when you walked into a Chase bank, you knew where you were. You weren't in another bank. So that was amazing. Yeah.
So we're going to jump a little bit back and forth, but just you were saying, like, how would you describe, put a definition to on brand? So you said, like, because I want my audience to sort of understand, some are marketers, some are people who have been involved in marketing, but it's quite different, slightly different. So first of all, what's the difference between marketing and branding? And then the second question is, and what does on brand mean for, perhaps you could give the example of JP Morgan Chase.
So I think that you have to, or it's easiest to start with the idea of brand. Brand is the impression you're left with. And so if you were to think about brands we know, like what's the difference between Nike and Adidas? What's the difference between Coke and Pepsi? And there are words and there are feelings that we as the potential customer or customer, people are like, no, I'm a McDonald's person. No, I'm a Burger King person. It's like, why? Right. So, and what is it about the brand that has affected or impacted the trajectory of our life and nostalgia? But bottom line, it's the feeling, the impression that you're left with. And that really starts from the founder and from the top. So what is the story? What is the impression? What are the feelings that you're left with? And what's the quality? So, and what are the words to describe that? So then marketing is, who are we reaching out to purposefully, deliberately? And what is the message we are communicating? And what are we selling right now? What's the price? And that it all is then on brand. So that's why I think you have to start with brand, because you have to know very clearly who you are and what are we imparting and what do we want people to be left with.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
So what you've described there is, when you talk about branding, in some ways branding could be to your unconscious. It's not necessarily, you're not always conscious that you might know you're a McDonald's man instead of a Burger King or a Nike, Adidas, but sometimes these things are quite subtle and they can be influenced by friends, colleagues, or whatever. But so, well, I was thinking that branding sometimes is, you might not be fully conscious why you are a McDonald's instead of a Burger King, but you are. But what's the psychology behind it?
Oh my gosh, I wish I knew the psychology behind it. I'm more in my retail research and retail consulting. I'm more in the camp of observing client behavior, customer, shopper behavior in a retail environment, which could include an airport or a bank lobby or a hotel lobby, including retail environments, including restaurant environments. What do people do when they're in that environment? What is their behavior? I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know why people actually do what they do. I just know that they do what they do when they're in particular environments. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to jump back again. You spent 14 years as a course supervisor at Landmark with their programs and seminars. So what made you take that shift again, slightly different from where you were previously, into course supervisor?
I absolutely love the learning environments of transformation. So when, all human beings were dealing with life as life is happening in relationships, in home, in work, with our health, with our own frustrations with ourselves and so forth, and stresses of life. And what I found so enlivening and important about the education at Landmark was that you could take pause, and I learned so much about the design of human beings and what were the obstacles and roadblocks in my own way, that once I could see things more clearly about how I was being in my life and the conclusions that I'd already drawn about myself and others and the limitations of that this work of transformation was just so important. I wanted to support the effort to have more and more people sit in a seat for 3 days in a classroom somewhere around the world and see more about themselves and more about life, so that at the end of it, there's experience of freedom and people can move forward in life with more ease in the areas that are important to them. So I spent a lot of years as a side hustle, if you will, as my volunteering activity, a lot of years producing programs for Landmark Education, which was a real gift in my life. And then there was a point where I felt like I was finished. I was complete with that.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
So what sort of courses does Landmark actually do? I'm not aware of the company.
The primary course is called the Landmark Forum. And then there's the advanced course and self-expression and leadership and programs on communication, all the things that we weren't taught in school, but teach us to be a better human being. So they call it transformational work. I think it's called transformational work because you go in thinking you're going to get tools, and what you get are like shifts in insight, shifts in perspective that don't feel tangible, and yet they produce amazing results. So transformational work.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to spend quite a bit of time on your intermittent fasting because that's currently what you do. But I just wanted to touch on something before we get into that. So you spent, I think it was just under 2 years on the Laurie Lewis partnerships, which was in ops management, coaching, sales, strategic marketing, branding. So what made you go into the self-employed, the entrepreneurial world of sort of consulting after those experiences with marketing and branding?
That was a big pivot. So when I was at JP Morgan Chase, I got laid off. Branding is not essential in this hierarchy of things. I reported.
Interestingly, just on that, were you in a recession at that time?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
They cut spending.
And it was a challenging time in banking. And so I reported directly to the chief marketing officer at Chase. And that was, oh my goodness, what extraordinary colleagues and coworkers. What a great experience I had working there. But I love looking at my career actually because I worked for like one of the largest banks in the world, other little tiny consultancies, my own entrepreneurship. And I grew up in a household, I guess I followed in my dad's footsteps to some degree, because when I was a little tiny girl, my dad went to Harvard Business School and got immersed into the world and mindset of entrepreneurship. So I grew up with my dad having an idea, starting a company. And for me, I just knew that when I got laid off, I could give myself some time and space to figure it out and kind of pull together all the things that I am good at, that I'm passionate about, and figure out how I could offer that to others. And I was really fortunate that I had some small companies come to me and say, can you help us with whatever problem they were dealing with? And because my background is so diverse and I'm so good at wearing a lot of hats, and keen listening is important, and being able to draw on my resources, that for a short time, I was able to put together some consulting projects and pivot from the large world of banking to the smaller world of Laurie Lewis partnerships.
So why did you wind the company up? Was it because I know you had a shift in sort of mindset that got you into intermittent fasting related to your health, but why did you wind up the business?
The business that I'm in right now?
No, the Laurie Lewis partnerships.
Oh, because I literally needed to pay the bills. Okay. So it wasn't like I was being a visionary and I had it was like, what do I have? What are the skills? What are the resources? Who are the people? What am I good at? What do I have to offer? And lay it out there. And so now in hindsight, it feels like I was being resourceful and fearless and in communication and just getting it done. Yeah. So it wasn't as if I had a vision to fulfill. It was immediate needs to fulfill. Like, let's keep working.
Okay. And then I've been listening to podcasts that you've been on recently, and you talk a lot about your intermittent fasting and the reasons behind why you started intermittent fasting with your health reasons of putting on weight and that. So just to give me a little bit of that story, why again did you pivot your life into intermittent fasting?
Well, I would say this is the greatest miracle of my life, actually. So I was crushed by menopause. They don't send us to biology class for older ladies. We know it's coming. We've heard of it. It's kind of spoken about in hushed terms, but no one, even our doctors, know how to help us through it. And even doctors will say, oh, just toughen up. It's a condition. You'll get through it. Well, it's a massive hormonal shift that leaves women. I mean, we should be celebrated for enduring this as opposed to pushed in a corner. It's brutal for most women, actually. Some sail through, and I'm really jealous of them. So it affects us in a laundry list of ways. And for me, I suddenly had brain fog, memory loss, my equilibrium was off, and I gained 50 pounds. Those are just like 4 of the horrible things that were happening, and suddenly gained 50 pounds, and nothing I did turned it around. So I was at what I would say absolute despondency. I was at the end of my rope. I remember a friend that, it seemed like a horrible friend at the time for posting a picture of me that other people could see my smiling face, but I could only see how much pain and discomfort I was in, not feeling like myself and being in physical pain. And so I saw this picture and I just thought, oh my gosh, is it actually true that it just gets worse and worse forever? Like, I'm just going to get heavier and foggier and more depressed and more in pain and more medication until you kick it at the end. And I thought, somehow, I held out a tiny glimmer of hope that wasn't true. And the reason I know that I held out a glimmer of hope is because one night I Googled, like, one last time, like, hormonal, menopausal, stubborn, fat, I feel horrible, Google help me. Yeah, and up popped these words, intermittent fasting. And I'd never heard that before. I didn't know. I'd heard of long-term water fasting, whatever, people have opinions about the efficacy of that. But I didn't know that you could live a daily life eating in an eating window and having your body rest and heal during the fasting hours, and then eat delicious foods of your choice to abundance in your eating window. I didn't know that you could live in a pattern like that. So I stayed up all night studying and learning. And I happened to be visiting my mom in the Colorado mountains at that time. So the next morning I woke up and I said, I think I found something that sounds what else am I going to try? And so she said, how may I support you? And I said, don't offer me breakfast. And I was off and running. Now, the beauty of this, there's so many, but I felt better within 3 days. People think it sounds scary and hard. And so I have now devoted my life to getting people over that fear or apprehension that it's scary and hard, to the very quick other side of feeling better and then reaching your health and weight and wellness goals and just living an easy, joyful life with a pattern of eating. And I think it's really important for people, no matter our age, to be at the top of our game, whatever the top of your game is, whether it's being effective as a business owner or business leader, or being effective in communication with your family, or being able to play and run around. I think we want to be at the top of our game. And when I had that thought that, oh my gosh, it's really all downhill from here, I don't want to buy into that. Mm-hmm. And that I saw that I could turn a corner and that I got better. And in 15 months, I lost the 51 pounds. But it was more importantly that I very quickly felt better and very easily could see that this was a beautiful way to live. And then other people were like, how do you do that? And now I have a whole business designed around how do you do that?
Right.
And the ease and beauty of it. Yeah.
There's lots of different ways I can go on this.
I know.
I've got 3 different ways that I've just jotted down, but let's unpick them. So first thing is, what other things did you try? I assumed you tried exercise and sort of eating healthily and salads and sort of vegetables and things. So did you try different types of diet? Did you exercise hard? Or what did you actually try at that stage?
What was so mysterious about it, Mark, it was that I've been, quote, air quotes, eating healthy for over 20 years. I broke a sugar addiction over 20 years ago, stopped drinking, Coke and diet soda and all of it. It's deliberately lost the taste for those things and shifted to eating whole, real foods. So when I suddenly packed on 50 pounds, everyone around me was like, oh, you're the healthiest eater we know. How could this happen to you? I was running marathons and eating lots of kale, So I always say to people that I ate the way I ate when I was lean in my 40s. I ate the exact same way when I gained 50 pounds. And I ate the exact same way when I lost 50 pounds. And now I should add to it. And I'm eating the exact same way, having maintained my ideal weight for 2.5 years. So the things that I tried were just buckling down on the air quotes, healthy eating and cutting out alcohol for 60 days and nothing changed. And, I said that I've totally eliminated sugar, but I looked for any hidden sugars, so it wasn't the food. It wasn't now the thing about exercise is when I got struck so hard by menopause, part of that was adrenal exhaustion, adrenal fatigue. And everything took so much effort to recover from. So my physical movement had to become very gentle. So I lived in New York City for about 25 years. And so I walked everywhere. So that didn't need, I'm moving all the time, but I did need to stop the hardcore running and the hardcore exercise and move into more gentle movement like yoga and more walking. So I just sleep is very important to weight loss. So I shifted everything. I shifted sleep. I shifted my supplements. I literally tried everything, and I just kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier.
And it's a hormonal imbalance that put the weight on, was it?
Yeah. And what I've learned, I really recommend a book by Dr. Jason Fung called The Obesity Code. And he explains beautifully how overweight and obesity is a hormonal issue. It's not a calories in, calories out issue. Now, the whole calories in, calories out philosophy makes sense. If you want to get slimmer, you move more and eat less. That makes perfect sense to everybody, except it doesn't work. All the diets work some of the time. And then most people, if you've lost weight with a diet, you know that when you start eating normally again, you just gain it all right back and more. And it gets harder and harder and harder because it's a hormonal issue, and the primary hormone being insulin. Right. So when we can keep insulin low by fasting, the body is able to tap into our fat stores for fuel. But when you're eating all the time, little diet meals, slowing the metabolism and feeling unsatisfied by all those little diet meals, you're keeping insulin high and never tapping into your fat stores. So it's a whole physiological mechanism that's all hormonal, actually.
How does diabetes fit into this as well? I assume you didn't have diabetes, but...
I didn't, but diabetes is amazing. I have clients who are full-blown in type 2, and within 3 to 6 months, they've moved down to their A1C. I don't know if in the UK you call it the A1C. Some of the numbers are different between our countries, like the cholesterol numbers and the blood glucose numbers tend to be different. But diabetes is diabetes, whatever continent you're on. Yeah. And what happens is, yes, there's a insulinemia and insulin resistance are when there's high levels of circulating insulin. And truly, the only thing that can bring it down is fasting. The ketogenic diet helps, but you get into ketosis 4 times more with intermittent fasting or pausing from eating, healing during the fasting hours than with the ketogenic diet. And then if the ketogenic diet works for you, super low carb, high fat, moderate protein, that works very well for some people. And so then the combination of two is great. But what I teach is, I believe that we're all bio-individual. Our bodies need different percentages of protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So if we get everybody fasting, clean fasting, the body in a total healing rest state, we can then together figure out the foods that work best for you. So one of my taglines or focus is eat the foods you love and the foods that love you back. And we got to figure out what are those foods that love you back, that have you thrive and feel amazing.
So we'll go on to your sort of how you package your programs and bespoke programs that you have for people. But before we get onto that, it's something that is important to me and important to a lot of people is mental health. So when you were going through this with the menopause and struggling with weight and things, how like your mental health was probably challenged and you were probably having struggles with it. How could people approach this from a mental health point of view, or did the fasting lessen the fogginess, the sort of strain on your mental health?
Yeah, I love this question, Mark. Thank you so much. It is all so connected. So I have a lot of therapists and doctors and psychiatrists, as well as cardiologists and pharmacists and RNs as my clients, because people in the world of healthcare really want to not only be more healthy themselves, and they're not immune from health challenges just because they're in healthcare, and to be able to pass along these practices and this ritual and regimen to their patients and clients. And so with regards to mindset and mental wellness, there's a doctor at Johns Hopkins called Dr. Mark Mattson, and he put together a whole research for the New England Journal of Medicine showing the cognitive and mental and emotional benefits of intermittent fasting and recommending that physicians recommend fasting to their patients. And you all know in the UK, Michael Mosley.
Yes,
Mark Mattson's in the US and Michael Mosley is in the UK. His wonderful BBC documentary, Eat, Fast, and Live Longer.
My wife is obsessed by this guy.
Yeah,
he does various programs throughout the year, and she's always looking like trying to spot those things because he gives such great insight. He's actually a journalist. He's a medical journalist. He was a doctor and then became a journalist, which I think is fascinating in itself. But he in the UK, and I'm sure he tries to challenge the status quo, but he's also very, very happy to challenge. For example, challenge intermittent fasting and just say, well, does it work? I will try it for
I'll try it
months.
myself. Exactly.
Which is fantastic. This is why we love him so much.
And so then to answer your question, it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Like, so I fasted, and because the brain fog lifted almost immediately and I had the experience of being myself. It's very hard to describe what it feels like to be yourself. When you're not, you know it. And when you suddenly are again, you know it. But putting words to that is nearly impossible. So I felt better quite quickly. So which came first? Was it the fasting helped me with my mental state, or that because I felt better, then the depression lifted? Or was it that the fasting helped to start balancing my hormones, which affected the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and cortisol? Like, it's all interwoven. Yeah. So yes, people feel better when they're pausing from eating and eating later in an eating window, eating to satiety, eating foods that make you feel well and make you feel happy. And there is that experience of anticipation. Well, anticipation increases dopamine and serotonin, and the idea of I get to eat that yummy dinner later. I'm so excited for that. That I really recommend a book by an author, Jen Stevens, who wrote a book called Delay, Don't Deny. And she's also written a new book called Fast, Feast, Repeat. It's a New York Times bestseller because I think, it builds on the Obesity Code, which is now an almost 5-year-old book that takes all the most recent research. It gives you a good how to begin and tons of testimonials. So Fast, Feast, Repeat is great in this delay, don't deny methodology, which is I don't have to deny myself of the pleasure of food. I'm just delaying it till later. And I think that helps people build confidence, which makes you improve your mental health. So when a person is flourishing and feels well and feels like they're improving, and you go to your doctor and your numbers are getting better and you can wake up and have more even energy throughout the day. Yeah. Mental health improvement.
Yeah. And this shows my complete naivety, and I'm sorry about this, but my initial thought was, just everything you've said so far counteracts everything I said, but I'm going to show my stupidity here.
Oh, please. Oh, no.
No. I thought you disliked food. I thought fasting was, in essence, you were denying yourself food because of a physiological benefit. But actually, from what you've said, it's you're not denying yourself. You're just delaying it until your window.
That's right. And here's so I've had people say to me, oh, I could never intermittent fast. I like food too much. That makes me laugh so hard, because every intermittent faster will say, we love food more than anybody. I mean, it's like, oh, it's so delicious, right? So the fasting hours are enlivening and healing and put your body into a condition of repair, digestive, hormonal, metabolic, cellular repair. Then you get the total pleasure and enjoyment and of delicious, nourishing food. We call ourselves food snobs because it's your precious eating window. And why on earth would you eat substandard, icky food in your amazing eating window? Eat delicious, high quality, extraordinary food made by, talented chefs.
And so do you do 16-8? Is that your pattern?
That's what I started with, actually. I recommend that people start with 12-12. So for you, all you out there, take 24 hours in a day and chop it into your fasting hours and your eating window. So if you were to say what time you're going to stop eating tonight, let's say it's 7 or 8 or whatever it is for you, whatever time you're going to stop eating tonight, that's when you close your eating window. It's when you start fasting. Then you're going to drink plain water, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, drink plain water, drink plain black coffee. And 12 hours after you closed your eating window, you can open it. And that's when you can have your creamy sweet coffee. You can have breakfast. And then in that 12-hour eating window, a lot of people are thinking, well, that wasn't very hard. Right. It's usually not that hard to go 12 hours. And then you can
sleep.
You sleep for
8, 9,
hopefully 7, 8 hours of it.
Yeah.
That's right. And so inch along, I decided not to inch along. For me, skipping breakfast wasn't so hard, and I like black coffee. So I started with 16-8. Yep. An 8-hour eating window. And then pretty quickly I was like, 8 hours, that seems so long. I can really enjoy 2 meals in a 6-hour eating window. So then I shifted to that, and I actually fast longer every day. For my body feels very, very happy fasting longer every day and enjoying a shorter eating window.
Amazing. So I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your ideal client is probably going to be female. But are all of your clients female?
Thank you for asking that. I work with quite a few men of all ages, actually, but let's just say 95% of my clients are women. I don't know I think that women enjoy. I don't like to generalize, right?
Well, you can generalize, it's fine.
The women that I work with are open to coaching. They love camaraderie. They love hearing from other people. So I do group programs on Zoom. I was a Zoom pioneer back in the day. When I started, I had to teach everyone how to use Zoom, and now I don't have to teach anyone anymore. And so I think women love learning from each other. A lot of men are like, well, this doesn't sound so hard. I don't eat before noon. I don't eat past 8. I drink water. I drink black coffee. And then I eat 2 or 3 meals. One and done. Nobody has to coach me for that. So good on you. Now,
you know what? Those type of people will do it for a week, maybe a month at a stretch, and then they'll give it up, won't they?
So I don't know. A lot of people are very successful on their own. In a perfect world, would my job, intermittent fasting coach, have to exist? No, because people's bodies are naturally inclined to pause from eating and then eat. It's just we happen, lucky us, or not so lucky us, to live in an environment where food is available 24/7, and we've been indoctrinated into this idea that we just have to be eating all the time. And nothing could be further from the truth. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day is a slogan that was invented by the cereal company, the breakfast cereal company called Kellogg's.
Yeah,
and I call it medical mythology. There are all sorts of things that we believe are good for us that are not grounded in science or research. And in fact, the opposite is true. And so, people need to figure out for themselves what can they do to feel their very best. And again, this idea that fasting is hard and scary is immediately, debunked when you start it. But as you said, keeping going is very important. And that's my biggest job, is to keep people informed, inspired, to be able to deal with the stresses of life and maintain their fasting pattern. Because in our day and age, we deal with stress with food. I don't know if you ever noticed, but when you're sleep deprived and when stress hits you, something upsetting, the body immediately goes, give me food now. And our ancestors didn't have it. It's like if there was a cupboard, it was bare until there was food available. So we have learned to comfort ourselves with food. And that isn't the best thing for the body. So we need to learn to comfort ourselves in other ways.
It was interesting you said that intermittent fasting repairs the body.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it balances our hormones. It keeps insulin low. It keeps cortisol low. It taps into our fat stores. And so the most exciting, you've heard of human growth hormone, HGH. When we're in a fasted state, HGH shoots up. For men, 2,000% approximately. For women, 1,000%. I don't know why you guys get better luck in the HGH production, but all sorts of metabolic, digestive, and cellular repair happens when we're fasting. So one amazing thing is called autophagy. And a researcher in Japan, Dr. Osumi, got the Nobel Prize in 2016 for his research on autophagy. And it's a deep cellular repair where every cell has old broken down proteins in it. And it's a lot more efficient for the body to repair damaged cells than it is to make new cells. And guess what increases the autophagy exponentially? Fasting. So when we're in a fasted state, the body's like, oh, thank God. Whew, you've given us this digestive rest and the hormonal rest, and the insulin can come back down, and now we can clean out all these cells. And so researchers can see through a microscope that a brand new cell next to a newly restored cell with autophagy, they can't tell the difference. So it's like taking out the cellular garbage. And that's why people who are intermittent fasting, our skin looks, I'm 58. I don't know if I look 58, but my skin looks a lot better than it did 4 years ago. Bright eyes. And one way that you can tell that it's working is people's skin tags fall off, moles disappear. One of my clients was upset because she wasn't losing weight as fast as she wanted to. So she sent me her before pictures and now. And one of them was from behind. She held the camera in the bathroom mirror. Yeah. And she's like, look, I look the same. I'm like, wait a minute. Do you see the biggest difference between these two pictures? It was a year in between. And she's like, no. And I said, look at all the moles on your back in the first one and none in the second one. She's like, that's crazy. What is that? Well, that's autophagy. So if there's that amount of healing happening on our surface, imagine the healing that's happening in our gut. And my plantar fasciitis went away. One of the things that happens with intermittent fasting is like a normalizing, a reduction of inflammation. And so many of our diseases are inflammatory. And so this debilitating foot pain that I had for 10 years that would shoot pain to the top of my head every morning, I could barely walk across the floor. was gone within 3 to 4 months of intermittent fasting. And that's one of the most common benefits that people experience is this plantar fasciitis going away. We spend so much money at the foot doctors and foot beds and special foot shoes, and it goes away.
Right, I'm conscious of time because both of us have got something in a little while, and I could talk to you. I've got the physiologically. I was really fascinated by this. We haven't talked about your book. We haven't talked about your design process. We haven't talked about your small business, how you set your business up. But unfortunately, we might have to get you back and delve into.
I know. This is why I like talking about it all day, every day for my job.
But let's talk about the last E. So what's the plans for the future? What's the future endeavors?
Well, it's really fun. I'm an opportunist. Something bubbles up and I'm like, oh, wow, this is happening. So I hadn't planned for it, which is all sorts of other people, either people with other occupations, so some RNs, other people who already have a life coaching business or a health coaching business or executive coaching. People are like, well, I've gotten so much from intermittent fasting personally. I wonder if I could create a module in my existing coaching business for intermittent fasting, or I want to just help my friends or the other women in the book club. Or so a few weeks ago, and this happened just totally organically on Facebook, somebody posted something like, hey, is being an intermittent fasting coach a thing? Like, can someone earn a living doing that? Like, can I find someone who, and so a whole bunch of other friends were like, Laurie Lewis does that, tagged me in this post. And then all these people were like, I want to know more about that. I want to know more about that. So I created a class, a 90-minute class. I led the same class twice. I think 85 people total took it, which is shocking to me. And then people are like, oh, I missed it. Are you going to lead it again? And I'm like, so I created a class, how to be an intermittent fasting coach, steps and best practices. And I just walked everybody through like an inquiry of how do you discover for yourself what aspect of this you'd like to take on and create for you and your life and your authentic expression. You don't have to be like me, do it in your own way. So I created this class to lead people down their own path. Well, now everybody wants it.
Brilliant.
Isn't that amazing?
Fantastic.
So maybe I will create a series of classes that people can learn to incorporate this for themselves, whether you're a nurse or a pharmacist or a school. So many people are well-educated teachers. I don't have a PhD in education, but a lot of people do, and they've had their own success with this way of living. Someone just wrote me this morning. She said, I got so much out of your class that my husband and I were talking about maybe creating a class for couples fasting together. I'm like, that's a great idea. See, that's your niche. Everybody's got a niche. You just don't know you have one. So you need to look at your own life and what you care about. Some people are like, I've been in AA for years, and maybe there's a way for me to teach intermittent fasting to people who are sober. Yes, do that. So this is a new development. And one of the things I teach is to not hold back, to take some steps, even when you don't have it all figured out. Everybody's like, oh, I'm so afraid I don't have the whole vision outlined and articulated. Who cares? You have a phone, which is a magical device, and 3 people. And so you can post things and share what you're up to and be like, would anybody be interested in having a group conversation about XYZ, and put a price on it, and you're off and running. So we live in a magical time of social media and having very smart phones, being connected like we are, people around the world. And so don't let the fact that you are timid or don't have it all figured out or to stop you.
Fantastic. That's amazing. All right, we're coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests.
Oh, I'm nervous.
Quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer. It's up to you. So first one, what's the best decision that you've made?
I made a wild decision. I love New York City. When I was a little girl growing up in the Colorado mountains, I was like, I'm moving to that big, bright, sparkly city. And I lived there for a long time. And then I had a thought to move west, and I live in Portland, Oregon. Okay. It's very beautiful here. And I don't know why I left New York, but I am really happy that I lived here during quarantine and COVID, where I could look out my windows and wave at my neighbors, and I
Absolutely.
felt connected and more alive than I think I would have in my tiny little New York apartment alone. So the
So I
best
know
decision
someone.
I ever made was moving to Portland, Oregon.
I know someone that's been in New York for quarantine, and
Mm,
where they would walk everywhere. They'd walk to work, they'd walk to hobbies or whatever lifestyle choices, pubs, restaurants. They would completely cut out of it, and they were in like this guy's doing all right for himself, so he was in a decent apartment, but
mm,
said just the
really hard.
constriction of where you were just was really, really difficult.
It's the
So
constriction. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
second question. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Um, well, I love this woman, Kathy Heller, who has a podcast called Don't Keep Your Day Job. And I'm involved with her in a program called Made to Do This. And I like this idea that she has of to write yourself a permission slip. So, so write yourself a permission slip to follow your passion, to take that first step, to do something bold, even if other people think that you are nuts, to write yourself a permission slip and to go for it.
Really nice. Who's helped you most in your career?
Oh, well, my mom is the one who said, "How may I help you?" when I said, "I'm going to try this crazy thing." And then I wrote my book a year ago. I launched it on International Women's Day, March 8th in 2020, before, and then everything hit the fan within a week. And I didn't think my mom would read it. She wasn't well, and she actually passed on recently. So now she's like my angel wings helping me
Yeah,
along. But she actually read my book and she said, "This is going to help so many people." And I'm grateful, so grateful for her words of "How may I support you?" And I feel like she still is.
that's amazing. Do you have any regrets?
Oh my God, how long do you have? Oh gosh. You know, I think we keep talking about this, that I think I'm an opportunist. I think that, things pop up and I'm like, whoa, squirrel, I'm going to go that way. I wish I were more of a long range planner, and I'm not.
But self-reflection, being aware of it, self-awareness is an important factor, even if you're not like, even if you don't necessarily think long term, to be aware that you think short term, you can bring other
Yeah.
people who will help you. Thank you for your honesty. I don't always get an answer with that when I ask that question, so thank you. What are you most proud of?
I'm proud of my outlook. I'm proud of knowing that everything's going to be okay. I'm proud of loving people as much as I do, and that I'm someone who can spin anything into gold and really mean it. Like whatever people feel might be bad news or cloudy, that I'm always learning and always seeing the good in life and in people.
Brilliant. What does legacy mean to you?
Oh gosh, I think it means something new for me now. Like people are saying to me, "You found your calling." I'm like, "My calling?" Well, here we are talking about something that will change lives, and I could talk to you about it forever, right? Like we could just keep talking, talking, talking. And that there are people who just up until, an hour ago are saying that what I've taught them and the example that I've been has changed their life and their families' lives and the people around them. I mean, my gosh, what a way to live. What a way to go. Like that after I go, people will remember that I taught them something that made their life better.
That's amazing. You should be ever so proud of that. You should be very proud of that. Okay, and the last one is, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
My business is Fast Forward Wellness, so fastforwardwellness.com. And there are 2 sections there. There's the group programs and the one-on-one coaching and some things about me and why intermittent fasting is helpful. And there's a contact place if you want to write me. And I love hearing from people, hearing how they're doing. And I love it when people sign up to work with me, of course.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely fascinating. As I said, I had quite a lot of other things we could have talked about. We never got time, but let's try and get another date in the diary when we can talk.
I love that. Some follow-up. I love the follow-up. It's
okay,
so
Laurie,
great to be with you, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.